Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you two short stories. The first story is titled Sheng. Sheng was a native of Dongshan in Sichuan. Since childhood, he had a deep love for reading, but because his family lived in a remote mountain village, he had no access to teachers for guidance. Despite being in his 20s, his writing still had many errors. Previously, Sheng's home was plagued by foxes, and food, clothing, and other items frequently went missing, causing him great distress. One night, while Sheng was reading, he placed his book on the desk. The book was again smeared and vandalized by the foxes, with the ink so heavily smudged in some places that the spacing between the lines was barely discernible. Consequently, Sheng had to select the slightly cleaner pages to continue reading, leaving him with only 60 or 70 poems. He was extremely angry but felt helpless. Sheng had also saved over 20 essays he had written, hoping one day to receive guidance from a knowledgeable scholar. The next morning, he found that his essays had been spread out on the desk and smeared with thick ink. Sheng was furious. Coincidentally, Sheng's friend, Sheng, came to Dongshan on some business. Having a good relationship with Sheng, he immediately visited him upon arrival. Sheng saw the smeared books and asked Sheng what had happened. Sheng expressed his frustrations and showed Sheng his defaced essays. Sheng examined them closely and noticed that the smeared and untouched sections seemed to carry a subtle critique. He also re-examined the fox-smeared books and found that the damaged parts were mostly redundant and could be omitted. Surprised, he said, "It seems the foxes did this deliberately. You shouldn't worry, but rather you should consider them your teachers." A few months later, Sheng re-evaluated his old works and realized that the fox's corrections were indeed accurate. He then rewrote 2 of his old essays and placed them on the desk to observe any further changes. By dawn, the essays had indeed been altered again. After another year, Sheng's essays were no longer smeared, but instead, the foxes would splash thick ink spots all over the pages. Sheng was puzzled and went to tell Sheng about it. After looking at the essays, Sheng said, "These foxes are truly your teachers. The essays they corrected are masterpieces. If you take the exam now, you will surely pass and earn a title." Sure enough, that year, Sheng took the exam and passed as a Zhai. Grateful to the foxes, Sheng frequently set up guest meals to offer them food and drink. Whenever he bought exemplary essays of Jinshe, he would rely on the fox's judgment without making any selections himself. Subsequently, Sheng took 2 more exams, both times achieving top scores, and was even specially admitted as a supplementary gongsheng in the provincial examination. At that time, the works of several famous scholars, known for their elegance and brilliance, were widely circulated and admired. Sheng had a copy of their essays and cherished it greatly, but the copy was completely spoiled when the foxes poured about a bowl of thick ink over it, rendering almost every word unreadable. Sheng then wrote some new essays himself, feeling pleased with his work, but all were smeared arbitrarily by the foxes. As a result, Sheng gradually began to distrust the foxes. Not long after, one of the famous scholars was arrested by the court for the purpose of rectifying literary style, and Sheng started to slightly appreciate the fox's foresight. However, every time Sheng wrote a new essay, it ended up being heavily smeared by the foxes. By this time, Sheng had achieved top scores in multiple exams and had grown quite proud, increasingly suspecting that the foxes were simply being capricious. He copied some of the previously praised essays that the foxes had heavily inked to test them again, but the foxes smeared them as well. Seeing this, Sheng laughed and said, "These foxes are really messing around. How can they now deny the essays they once praised?" Consequently, he stopped preparing food for the foxes and locked his reading materials in a chest. The next morning, Sheng found the chest still securely locked, but when he opened it, he saw 4 lines drawn on the cover, each thicker than a finger. The first chapter had 5 lines drawn on it, and the second chapter also had 5 lines, but there were no more lines after that. From that day on, the foxes never returned. Later, during the annual exams, Sheng scored 4th class the first time and 5th class the next 2 times. Only then did he realize that the exam outcomes had been hinted at by the fox's strokes. At the end of the story, the author adds a commentary. He says, "The ancients often said that pride invites loss, while humility brings benefits. This might be the most profound truth in the world. For someone like Sheng, who became conceited after gaining a bit of fame and clung stubbornly to the outdated habits of so-called famous scholars without adapting, it inevitably led to his mediocrity. The dangers of being overly self-assured are probably just like this." The second story is titled Feng Shui. In Yizhou, the family of Song Junshu had always been devout believers in Feng Shui and geomancy. Even the women in the household were permitted to read such books and understand the principles involved. When Song Junshu passed away, his 2 sons each set up their own households and sought to find ideal burial sites for their father. Like their father, they would travel great distances to recruit anyone reputed to be skilled in Feng Shui. Consequently, the 2 families gathered a total of 100 Feng Shui masters, and every day, they led these experts on horseback across the countryside, searching for suitable burial sites. Each brother, accompanied by his own group of Feng Shui masters, scouted different areas, moving in and out like 2 small armies. After more than a month, both families had chosen what they believed to be the best burial sites. One son claimed that burying their father in his chosen location would lead to descendants becoming marquises, while the other son insisted that his chosen site would result in descendants becoming prime ministers. The brothers argued incessantly and, out of spite, stopped consulting each other. They each began constructing burial sites for their father at their selected locations, complete with ceremonial canopies and banners. When the funeral procession reached a fork in the road, the brothers, each with their followers, fought over the hearse. From morning until late afternoon, they could not come to a decision, and the guests, tired and frustrated, left. The pallbearers, having changed shoulders 10 times, were exhausted and could no longer carry the coffin. They decided to leave the coffin by the roadside. Since the burial was postponed, they had to gather craftsmen to build a temporary shelter to protect the coffin from the elements. The elder brother built a house next to the shelter and left servants to guard the coffin. The younger brother did the same. Out of stubbornness, the elder brother then expanded his house, and the younger brother followed suit. After 3 years, the area had developed into a village. Years later, the 2 brothers passed away one after the other. Their wives then jointly discussed and decided to break the stubborn views held by their late husbands. They rode out together in a carriage to inspect the previously chosen burial sites for Song Junchu. Upon returning, they both agreed that neither site had good feng shui. So, they pooled their resources to hire a more skilled feng shui master to find a new burial site. The feng shui master, for each chosen location, had to draw a diagram and submit it to the sisters-in-law for approval. Several diagrams were presented daily, but each one was scrutinized and rejected by the sisters-in-law for various flaws. After more than 10 days, they finally selected a suitable burial site. The elder sister-in-law, upon seeing the diagram, happily remarked, "I think this place is suitable." She then showed it to the younger sister-in-law, who said, "This place will certainly bring a military scholar into our family." Eventually, the family buried Song Junchu there. 3 years later, as predicted, Song Junchu's eldest grandson passed the provincial military examination and became a military scholar. At the end of the story, the author offers the following commentary. The techniques of feng shui and physiognomy cannot be said to be entirely without merit. However, when such matters become an obsession and are blindly and excessively believed, it becomes a case of taking things too far. Moreover, the 2 brothers' stubbornness over the burial site, to the point of abandoning their father's coffin by the roadside, hardly counts as the most basic filial piety. How could they expect to rely on the feng shui of the burial site to bring blessings to their descendants? In contrast, the approach taken by the sisters-in-law is truly commendable. The story mentions feng shui, an ancient Chinese tradition and art of divination. It attempts to influence the fortune of individuals and families by considering the location, orientation, and positioning of graves and houses in relation to the surrounding landscape, such as mountains and bodies of water, to bring good luck to residences and businesses. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tales. Sheng and Feng Shui. If you enjoyed them, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.